So guys, welcome to another weekly outlook where I go over the main pairs that I'm looking out for this week to trade, which align the mostly fundamentally and technically in order to take the best A+ setup. So to begin with this week, we're kind of switching to some risk on environment, which means that AUD, NZD, CAD probably are likely to rise. Now, of course, anything could happen throughout the week because in 2 weeks there is a deal expected between Xi and Trump, and for me, I'm not expecting that deal to happen, or at least I'm expecting some things to happen along the way. Trump might post a tweet, Xi might post a tweet, which will probably or possibly will switch the risk on environment back to risk off. But we'll see how it goes. For now on, or at least for this moment, risk on is the play. So if I look at the chart here, I hit EURUSD shorts TP, which I mentioned for a very long time on my weekly outlooks, still inside this one. And yes, it is counter trend, guys, but I've already explained it a lot of times. If you look at it on the daily time frame, then what can you see? Well, you actually took some monthly liquidity here, and from there I expect to possibly take some liquidity out at this low and maybe even this low to kind of get the whole trend gone, right? So right now we got kind of a breakout of this trend line. So there are two options for me. Either this is a fake out into the downside in order to now continue to trade up higher, but then we'll need to see a good reaction from now on from this liquidity, or we just respect this and from this overall order flow, we just continue to trade down lower towards at least this demand zone, this liquidity low. So that is also my play for EURUSD this week. So what am I going to do? Like I mentioned, this is our daily overall order flow here, right? So from that overall order flow, what am I going to do? I'm going to first wait to tap that, of course, but then this liquidity and this liquidity I want to see taken out. Then I want to see confirmation again before shorting again from this whole supply zone. So if I don't see any confirmation, am I going to short? No, because this could be a reaction from that liquidity to now continue up higher. So only if I see a reaction that could confirm that we trade down lower. Of course, there is risk that we just trade up higher, but if I see that liquidity getting grabbed and I see enough confirmation, I might take some scaling shorts. So for this one, I have my alert at this liquidity. I'll wait for that alert to go off. Then I'll wait for the fractal break and I would be ready to take short setups. So same thing on the dollar. On the dollar, I'm still expecting upside towards this 100 level, like this high at almost 100. And there are two options for me. Either right now we see a pullback to this demand to take out this liquidity and continue up higher. But I think the most likely option is that with this bullish dollar, with this impulse, we just continue upwards for the beginning of this week to take out that liquidity. From there, see a little pullback. And then from here again, you continue to trade up higher. So that's my plan as well. Now, which trades am I going to take based off of this? Maybe a little USD short if the fundamentals align as well. Let's say there comes out some fundamental news that will be bearish for the dollar, then I will of course look for some shorts, because then the dollar and the technicals align in order to take this small short. And then from there, from this demand, I'll also look for longs. So right now, am I going to look for any setups? No. So I'm not going to short, I'm not going to long. I'll wait for this to either see a possible short or wait for this to see a possible long, for example. All right. So that's my game plan on the dollar. So what is also interesting, the Swiss franc actually is looking quite bearish because of some fundamentals. I cannot pop it up right now because it's just a straight up recording, but this morning on forexfundamentals.com there was a news event around rate cuts, I think from Swiss franc or something along with inflation, which should cause the Swiss franc to deappreciate and see lower prices. So I'm looking for example, USD Swiss longs, right? Because the USD is overall fundamentally bullish. The Swiss franc is quite bearish this week because we're risking or switching to risk on, so the Swiss franc should also already decline. And as well, the Swiss franc, because of that inflation news, is also getting weaker. So with that in mind, if the Swiss franc gets weaker, these pairs tend to trade up higher. So right now, am I going to take long setups? No, of course not, because we take liquidity above this high. So I'm waiting for a retracement underneath this low, maybe even this low. I would prefer this low actually. And then see that retracement. If I then look what the 50% is, 50% is all the way over here. That would of course be the best. Why? You have some liquidity at that point, you have the quarterly level, but I don't know if you will retrace all the way down here, but that would be amazing because then longs are definitely very, very valid for this week. USDCAD, I also want to take longs again with that dollar bullish, being bullish, and the CAD is right now kinda bullish and bearish. So bearish because of the actual fundamentals of the Canadian dollar, but bullish because of the risk on environment we're now getting into. So I would say these are a little bit more risky than USD Swiss longs, but still possible because technicals are beautiful. Bullish, boom, seeing a retracement perfectly into the liquidity. As you can see, I perfectly bottom tick this pair to trade up higher. But yeah, right now I want to keep on continuing to trade up higher because all these highs need to get out. So I want to see liquidity get taken out at the lows, then seeing confirmation, and then longs again are possible towards a swing high. So that's what I'm waiting for, but I will be careful with the news events because of course, as you know, my fundamentals and technicals need to align in order to take those long setups. So needing to wait for some CAD news. Then we have EURUSD, which I already explained those, so we don't have that, but we have Euro Swiss, which I actually entered in some long setups. So the thing for that is, so why am I longing Euro Swiss? Because in my opinion, the euro is, yes, a bit weak, but it is quite neutral at the moment. So it could definitely get weaker, but for me, it is the best cross pair in my opinion against the Swiss franc at the moment, because we know we want to take XXX Swiss long setups such as Euro Swiss, AUD Swiss, GBP Swiss, USD Swiss. But what is the best thing to compare against the Swiss? In my opinion, the euro. Why would you say? Because CAD Swiss, NZD Swiss, AUD Swiss, they should be the best because we're going to risk on environment, so they should rise, right? And that would be perfect to combine with the Swiss franc. But the thing is that AUD Swiss, NZD Swiss, and CAD Swiss, they heavily rely on the risk on and risk off environment at the moment, right? And like I already mentioned in the beginning of this video, with the upcoming deal that will be announced in 2 weeks or so between Trump and Xi, I see a lot of complications, and I don't know if the AUD, NZD, and CAD longs are the best to take with this kind of tricky environment at the moment, where we could easily switch to risk off, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So if you don't see it that way, then definitely AUD, NZD, and CAD Swiss are nice. Also fundamentally, or like technically, in my opinion, Euro Swiss looks the best. You have bullish order flow right now, and you have an open high right here at the quarterly level. A lot of trendline liquidity, and if you look on the daily time frame, what happens? You take a lot of liquidity at the lows. With that fundamentally being bullish, you could definitely take some liquidity at the highs, continuing the overall order flow up higher to that liquidity and that level. So that's the reason for that long. So right now, again, what could happen? A little retracement to tap the monthly level, and from there trade up higher. If you even go to the 1 hour time frame, you can even see that I entered off of this tap at the monthly level, but right now it does even make sense. Either two things: either we continue the order flow up higher, the 1 hour order flow, or we see on the 4 hour a retracement to this liquidity at the monthly level, and from there see a reaction. So those are possible. So definitely I would look for some longs towards that high. Keep in mind though that the euro is actually overall weak, but again, you can see some pullbacks on the euro. So this for me is the best cross pair for the Swiss franc in order to long. At this point, I'm taking profits because technically it doesn't make any sense anymore, and maybe risk on, risk off, all of that kind of stuff. The bearish euro could then kick in, for example. So from here, I'll take my profits. If I then look some more at some pairs, so we had GJ that I was looking at to short. Why? Well, I'm looking at some, or actually that's not true, because I was in the beginning of this week, or actually at the end of previous week, I was looking at some yen longs in or like a little risk off environment, with all of that things going on with the deal. I expect there to be, like I already mentioned a lot of times here, to be complications in order to then people in 1 week or in some days or after a tweet go into risk off environment, and that's when the yen should rise, which should push this down lower. Right now, I don't know if that will happen, so it's quite tricky to bet on that, right? But the pound is quite weak still, so in my opinion, we could possibly just continue this overall bearish trend towards, for example, this quarterly level and take out this whole dead gap, basically this whole gap that we could easily take out. So you have the previous weekly open here, so want to take out that high, the liquidity from previous week. Then again, this is your low, order flow bearish, and then from that monthly level, take shorts. That would be what I'm looking for. And again, until that moment, the fundamentals should also need to be in line before taking any shorts. But that's definitely something that I could look at. So then we had GBPNZD, which also looked quite nice to take long setups. But again, right now, the NZD is quite strong and GBP is also quite bearish, which should fundamentally push this pair down lower, as you can also see here. So technically, it is quite nice. Why? On a daily time frame, you'll see you perfectly hit discount prices, you hit this demand zone, take all this liquidity, you can possibly continue. But overall, this might be your overall supply zone. From here, you could continue to this liquidity low, for example, before longing. So actually, don't think that I see anything in GBPNZD. Overall, this week, I don't see a lot going on. The main things that were previous week were dollar pairs, like dollar longs. We had EURUSD short, which we took, GBPUSD shorts, which we took. AUDUSD is also something. So here, AUD should be rising because of the risk on environment we're now getting into. But for me, the dollar is still quite strong. And like I already mentioned, I'm expecting some tweets, some talks to happen between Trump and Xi, which will escalate the environment, where we should go to risk off and then see a decline in risk on pairs like AUD. And then we should see some downside, in my opinion. And if you look at the weekly time frame, so previous week, or like we took some liquidity at the highs, we have a lot of liquidity at the lows, and inside this supply, we saw a huge reaction from that quarterly level, right? So from there, I'm now expecting that we could easily trade down lower. If you also look at the daily time frame, again, from that liquidity at that quarterly level and this overall supply, you see a big reaction. And for me, we could easily continue that down lower with the possibility of there being an escalation, which should drive this pair down lower. So I think AUDUSD is quite nice as well. But in order to take any trades, we would like to wait for the environment to, or like for some escalation to happen. Let's say we see this, because right now we risk on. Trump posts a tweet, we see a pump down lower, create a new supply, and then from here we can short, for example, right? That would be something I would be looking for. At the moment though, we know CAD is also risk on, so should be pushing, but we also know that CAD fundamentally is actually quite weak. So with a possible weaker CAD and a stronger AUD, I think AUDCAD is definitely nice to take some longs. So here you have been consolidating, but if you look on the higher time frame on the weekly, you kind of have this trend line basically going on over here. You took some liquidity underneath this whole range, so you're kind of ranging. You then see manipulation, and now I see upside until this and this high. So on the 4-hour time frame, that would mean easily this high. And right now we reacted from the quarterly level, but I want to break above it to create this overall demand, which takes out liquidity, so that's a strong demand. and then from there I would like to trade up higher and also break above the quarterly level to confirm that we're going to trade above it, and then I'll take some possible long setups on AUDCAD. Definitely also looks nice as well. For the rest, there's not much I see that's interesting. I'm looking at the USOIL longs. Reason being is that first of all, if you look at the daily time frame or even on the weekly time frame, but it's more clear on the daily actually, here you fail to again break that low, and as you also see here, if you fail to break a low, you grab liquidity at the highs, and that's something I've tested myself. So here you fail to break the low for 1 second, so you grab some more fuel at the highs in order to fuel down lower. So here you fail, so you grab more liquidity at the highs, but you still have this high as well. And why am I expecting this high to also be taken before shorting, for example? Well, because the fundamentals right now on Forex fundamentals, almost all of the articles are talking bullish on the oil. So here we were overbought, so I took a small short setup. But now that we got the retracement and we create a strong low actually, because it swipes the lows here, so it swipes a lot of early buyers, so that's a strong low. And then from there we change the order flow bullish. So now this is your overall demand zone. You grab some liquidity, and from here you could continue to trade up higher because you saw a little reaction from previous weekly open to grab some liquidity. But now in my opinion you could easily continue to trade up until that liquidity which I mentioned. Now also here, if you break above that high, you then also break above the monthly open. So if we see that, a little tap into the monthly open and then continue up higher, that would also be a very, very clean setup as well. And that might be a scaling or something along those lines. Then we have silver, which I was looking to long, but I ended up not doing that because it's early in the week, and for me we could kind of see something like one more push down lower to see one more liquidity grab before longing. But overall the order flow is bullish. If you look, you took some daily liquidity at this low, the quarterly level, you easily reacted from that, and the order flow is bullish, so you could just continue to trade up higher. You have equal highs over here which we should also take out, and then from there just trade up higher. On the 1 hour time frame you can also see that you tap this demand zone, you then create the order flow bullish, you now grab some liquidity underneath this low, and you could easily trade up higher. The one thing is that this might be your first step into this demand zone, and if you look, there's not really much liquidity in this move up. So maybe I'm looking to see something like this for then to trade up higher. So that's why I'm being careful with these silver longs, and I wait for some more confirmation. So yeah, that's something that I would be looking for to happen. Of course, right now, as you can see, you can already react or expect to react from this monthly level to already move up higher. But in my opinion, that's quite risky. So I'm not doing that. Better safe than sorry, right guys? So overall, that is something that I'm looking for this week. And then one more thing is Hong Kong 50 shorts as well as USD longs. The reason being is, why did I took longs? Because I was expecting a rumor about very good trade deals, so this should rise. And then we saw a dump because the trade deal actually wasn't that good, and now we see a little rise again because they're expecting the trade deal to be good in 2 weeks. But again, I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting that to not be true. So if I see this liquidity, for example, and then confirmation, I could already get in shorts, predicting that there will be no trade deal or a bad trade deal, which will drive Hong Kong 50 down lower again. So if I then go to USD, same thing. I took shorts over here because of the rumor that there were going to be good trade deals. I exited when we were close to the trade deal. I then entered perfectly at this low because I was expecting a bullish dollar CPY and as well, or not CPY but FOMC, and as well the trade deals to not be that good. And as you can see, perfectly got out. And right now I'm just waiting for some more liquidity at the lows, a little pullback as of expectations of a very good trade deal. Then I'll try to get in if we see some confirmation in order to go long, because I'm expecting no to a bad deal, which should drive this pair up higher. All right. So those are basically all of the pairs that I'm watching. Not a lot. I will update you guys on Wednesday, midweek outlook, if anything has changed. But overall, these are my main pairs for this week. I definitely think Euro Swiss is definitely one of the best ones so far. It aligns technically and fundamentally. So yeah, definitely is one on my outlook. Overall, that's it for this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and got some pairs that you might want to take a look at yourself. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Ciao.